The alarm rang at 5:30 a.m. Daniel Carter opened his eyes slowly, staring at the cracked ceiling of his small apartment. For a few seconds, he lay there silently, listening to the quiet hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen and the faint sound of cars passing outside. Another day. Another long day. At 34 years old, Daniel's life looked very different from what he once imagined. 7 years ago, he had dreams of building a career, traveling, maybe even owning a small house somewhere peaceful. But life had other plans. Now he was a single father, raising his 6-year-old daughter Lily on his own in a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Chicago. And every day began exactly the same way. Daniel pushed himself out of bed and walked quietly into the kitchen. The apartment was small, so small that he could see Lily sleeping peacefully on the couch in the living room from where he stood. Her tiny arm hugged a stuffed rabbit. Daniel smiled softly. No matter how hard life became, that little girl was the reason he kept going. He started making breakfast. Nothing fancy. Just scrambled eggs and toast. The smell slowly filled the apartment. A few minutes later, Lily's sleepy voice drifted from the couch. "Daddy, is it morning already?" Daniel chuckled. "Unfortunately, yes." Lily rubbed her eyes and sat up, her messy brown hair sticking out in every direction. "Do we have school today?" she asked hopefully. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Nice try. It's Tuesday." Lily groaned dramatically and flopped back onto the pillow. Daniel laughed. Mornings were always like this, simple, chaotic, and full of small moments that meant everything. By 7:15 a.m., they were rushing out the door. Daniel held Lily's backpack while trying to lock the apartment door at the same time. "Daddy, we're gonna miss the bus," Lily shouted. I know. They hurried down the street toward the bus stop. The cool Chicago wind brushed against their faces as autumn leaves scattered across the sidewalk. Lily grabbed Daniel's hand and skipped beside him. Despite everything, despite the bills, the exhaustion, the endless responsibilities, Daniel felt something warm in his chest. He wasn't rich. He wasn't successful yet. But he had Lily. And that was enough. After dropping Lily at school, Daniel headed straight to work. He worked at Brightstone Marketing, one of the fastest-growing marketing companies in the city. Daniel wasn't a top executive. He wasn't even close. He was just an assistant manager, working long hours trying to keep projects running smoothly. But there was one person in the building everyone talked about. The CEO. Sophia Bennett. She was young, brilliant, incredibly successful, and completely intimidating. Employees called her the Ice Queen. Not because she was cruel, but because she was distant, professional, untouchable. She walked through the office like a storm of confidence, rarely smiling, rarely stopping to chat. Daniel had only spoken to her twice. Both times were quick, professional, and nerve-wracking. Still, Daniel focused on his work. The day moved quickly with meetings, phone calls, and endless emails. Before he knew it, the sun had begun to set outside the office windows. But Daniel wasn't going home yet. That night, a major project presentation was due. And there was just one small problem. His babysitter had cancelled. Which meant Lily was coming to work with him. Around 7:30 p.m., the office was almost empty. Most employees had gone home hours ago. The lights were dim, and the quiet hum of computers filled the room. Daniel sat at his desk typing quickly while Lily sat at a nearby table drawing with crayons. "Daddy, look," she said proudly. Daniel glanced over. She had drawn a picture of the two of them holding hands under a big yellow sun. "That's amazing," Daniel said with a smile. "You forgot something," Lily replied. "What?" "You forgot to draw yourself smiling." Daniel laughed softly. "Good catch." Just then, the sound of heels clicking across the office floor echoed through the quiet space. Daniel froze. Those footsteps were unmistakable. Sophia Bennett. She walked into the department, dressed in a sleek black business suit, her posture confident and elegant as always. But then she stopped. Her sharp eyes landed on the small girl sitting at the desk. For a moment, the powerful CEO looked completely confused. "Is that a child?" she asked calmly. Daniel quickly stood up. Yes, sorry, this is my daughter, Lily. Lily looked up and waved shyly. Hi. Sophia blinked. Something about the tiny wave seemed to soften her serious expression. Why is she here? Sophia asked. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. My babysitter cancelled, and I had to finish the presentation tonight. Sophia looked around the quiet office. Then at Lily. Then back at Daniel. You stayed late. With your child? Daniel shrugged with a tired smile. Deadlines don't really care if you're a single dad. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Then Sophia noticed the dark circles under Daniel's eyes. You look exhausted, she said. Daniel laughed lightly. Well, unless my boss wants to offer free overtime pizza or a couch to sleep on, I'll survive. It was meant to be a joke. Just a tired joke. But Sophia didn't laugh. Instead, she studied him for a moment. Then she glanced at Lily, who had started yawning. Time seemed to pause. And then Sophia said something that Daniel never expected. Do you want to stay tonight? Daniel blinked. Wait, what? Sophia spoke calmly. There's a guest suite upstairs. I sometimes stay here when I work late. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. For a moment, he wasn't sure if he had heard correctly. Lily yawned again and curled up on the couch. Sophia quietly picked up the small blanket beside her and gently covered the sleeping girl. Daniel watched in surprise. The powerful CEO, tucking in his daughter. Sophia looked back at him. Children shouldn't be out this late, she said softly. Daniel felt something strange in his chest. Gratitude. And confusion. But before the story continues, if you're enjoying this story so far, take a quick moment to support our channel. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for daily new emotional and romantic stories just like this one. Also hit the like button, it really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments below which country are you watching from? We love seeing viewers from all around the world. Now, let's continue the story. Daniel looked at Lily sleeping peacefully on the couch. Then he looked back at Sophia. Are you serious? He asked quietly. Sophia nodded. Completely. Daniel hesitated. He had always been proud. He never liked accepting help. But tonight, Lily needed rest. And he needed to finish his work. Finally, Daniel nodded slowly. Thank you. Sophia gave a small, almost invisible smile. Come with me. She turned and walked toward the elevator. Daniel gently picked up Lily in his arms and followed her. As the elevator doors closed, Daniel had no idea that this simple moment. A tired joke. A kind offer. A quiet night in an empty office. Was about to change his life forever. And this was only the beginning. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Daniel stepped out carefully, holding Lily in his arms so she wouldn't wake up. Her small head rested on his shoulder, and her tiny fingers still clutched the sleeve of his shirt. Sophia Bennett walked ahead of him down the quiet hallway. The top floor of Brightstone Marketing looked completely different from the rest of the building. Downstairs, everything felt busy and crowded. But up here, the space was calm, modern, and almost luxurious. Soft lighting glowed along the walls. Large glass windows revealed the breathtaking Chicago skyline outside, the city lights sparkling like thousands of stars. Daniel had never been on this floor before. Wow, he whispered under his breath. Sophia stopped in front of a door and opened it. This is the guest suite, she said calmly. Daniel stepped inside and immediately felt out of place. The room looked more like a luxury hotel than an office space. A large comfortable bed stood near the window. There was a soft couch, a small kitchen area, and warm lighting that made the room feel peaceful. Daniel gently placed Lily on the bed. She shifted slightly but didn't wake up. Sophia walked over and carefully pulled the blanket up over Lily's shoulders. For a moment, the powerful CEO stood quietly beside the sleeping child. Her expression had changed. The usual confident and distant look in her eyes had softened into something much more human. She's adorable, Sophia said softly. Daniel smiled. Yeah, she is. He watched Lily sleep for a moment before turning back to Sophia. Thank you again, he said sincerely. You really didn't have to do this. Sophia crossed her arms lightly. I know. Daniel chuckled. You're not exactly known for being generous with employees. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Is that what people say about me? Daniel instantly looked nervous. Not exactly like that. For a second, Sophia stared at him. Then something surprising happened. She laughed. It was quiet, but real. I think I know my reputation, she said. Daniel relaxed a little. Well, the Ice Queen nickname is pretty famous. Sophia tilted her head. And you're not afraid of me? Daniel shrugged. Honestly, I'm too tired to be afraid of anyone. Sophia shook her head slightly, amused. Get some rest, she said. You can finish your presentation in the morning. Daniel hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. She turned toward the door, then paused. If Lily needs anything, there are snacks in the kitchen. Thank you, Daniel replied again. Sophia nodded once before leaving the room. The door closed quietly behind her. For a few seconds, Daniel just stood there. The silence felt strange. He looked around the beautiful room again. Then he looked at Lily sleeping peacefully. Guess tonight we're staying in a 5-star office hotel, he whispered. He sat on the couch, rubbing his tired eyes. Within minutes, exhaustion took over. For the first time in weeks, Daniel fell asleep without worrying about catching the last bus, or waking up early enough to beat the morning traffic. Morning came slowly. Golden sunlight streamed through the tall windows, lighting up the room. Lily stirred under the blanket and blinked sleepily. At first, she looked confused. This wasn't their small apartment. The bed was too soft. The ceiling was too tall. She sat up slowly. Then she noticed the giant window. Lily jumped off the bed and ran toward it. Daddy, she gasped. Daniel woke up instantly. What happened? Come here. Daniel walked over, still half asleep. When he looked outside, he understood Lily's excitement. The Chicago skyline stretched across the horizon. Skyscrapers reflected the early morning sunlight, and the city looked alive. Lily pressed her face against the glass. Daddy, is this a castle? Daniel laughed. Not exactly. It feels like one. Just then, there was a gentle knock on the door. Daniel opened it. Sophia stood outside holding 2 coffee cups and a small paper bag. Good morning, she said. Daniel blinked in surprise. You brought breakfast? Sophia handed him the bag. Bagels. Lily peeked from behind Daniel. Sophia knelt slightly so she was at eye level with the little girl. Did you sleep well? Lily nodded. Yes. She pointed excitedly at the window. Your house is amazing. Sophia chuckled. This isn't my house. It should be, Lily replied confidently. Daniel laughed awkwardly. Sorry, she says whatever she thinks. Sophia stood up. That's refreshing. They sat together near the window while Lily happily ate her bagel. The moment felt strangely normal. Not like a boss and employee. More like 3 people sharing a quiet morning. After a few minutes, Sophia looked at Daniel. You're doing a good job. Daniel looked confused. With what? With her. Daniel glanced at Lily. She makes it easy. Sophia watched the little girl carefully. Something about the scene touched her more than she expected. Maybe it was the way Lily laughed. Or the way Daniel constantly checked to make sure she was okay. It felt warm. Real. Very different from the quiet, lonely penthouse Sophia returned to every night. Finally, she stood up. I should get to work. Daniel nodded. Right, me too. As Sophia walked toward the door, she paused. Daniel. Yes. Would you like to join me for lunch today? Daniel froze. Lunch? Yes. Daniel looked surprised. You mean, like a meeting? Sophia shook her head. No. He blinked. Then smiled nervously. Sure. Good, Sophia replied calmly before leaving. A few minutes later, Daniel walked into the office downstairs. The moment he stepped inside, something felt strange. People were staring. Whispering. One coworker leaned toward another and whispered loudly. Did he just come from the executive floor? Another employee whispered back. I think he stayed here all night. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. He sat at his desk and tried to focus on his work. But the whispers didn't stop. Around noon, Sophia walked into the office. The entire room fell silent. Her confident footsteps echoed across the floor. She stopped beside Daniel's desk. Ready for lunch? She asked calmly. The office exploded with silent shock. Daniel stood up slowly. Yeah. As they walked toward the elevator together, dozens of curious eyes followed them. Inside the elevator, Daniel finally laughed. I think the entire office just had a heart attack. Sophia looked amused. They'll survive. The elevator doors closed. Neither of them knew it yet. But that simple lunch, that unexpected invitation, would slowly begin to change everything between them. And this was only the beginning. The elevator doors opened into the lobby of a quiet restaurant just a few blocks away from the Brightstone office. Daniel stepped out beside Sophia, still feeling a little unsure about the situation. Lunch with the CEO? That was definitely not part of his normal routine. The restaurant Sophia had chosen was elegant but calm, soft lighting, warm wooden tables, and large windows that looked out over the busy Chicago streets. A hostess immediately recognized Sophia and guided them to a table near the window. Daniel noticed how confident she looked walking through the room. People respected her. Some even looked impressed. But when Sophia sat down across from him, something about her presence felt different than it did in the office. Less distant. More human. So, Sophia said as she picked up the menu. Tell me about Lily. Daniel smiled instantly. There was something about talking about his daughter that always brought warmth to his voice. She's 6, he began. She loves drawing, riding her scooter, and asking questions that I can't always answer. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Like what? Daniel chuckled. Yesterday she asked why the moon follows our car at night. Sophia laughed softly. And what did you say? I told her the moon likes us. Sophia smiled. That's a good answer. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence while the waiter brought their drinks. Sophia looked out the window at the busy city traffic before speaking again. You make it sound easy. Daniel shook his head immediately. It's not. He leaned back in his chair. Being a single parent is complicated. Sophia studied him carefully. Why are you doing it alone? Daniel hesitated. He wasn't used to talking about personal things at work. But something about Sophia's calm voice made it easier. Lily's mom left when Lily was 2, he said quietly. Sophia's expression softened. She just walked away? Daniel nodded. Some people aren't meant to stay. The words hung in the air for a moment. Sophia looked down at the table, thinking. You never considered starting over, she asked. With someone else? Daniel laughed quietly. Between work, bills, and raising a kid, dating isn't exactly at the top of my schedule. Sophia nodded slowly. For some reason, his answer stayed in her mind. The rest of lunch passed quickly. They talked about work, life in Chicago, and even a few funny stories about Lily. When they finally stood to leave, Daniel realized something surprising. The conversation had felt natural. Not like a boss interviewing an employee. More like two people simply getting to know each other. Back at the office, something unusual started happening. Over the next few weeks, Sophia began trusting Daniel with more responsibilities. Important clients. Major presentations. Team leadership. But Daniel didn't treat the new pressure like a burden. He handled it calmly, patiently. One afternoon, the marketing department was in complete chaos. A huge campaign deadline was approaching, and several problems had appeared at the last minute. Designers were rushing between desks. Phones were ringing non-stop. Emails were flooding everyone's inbox. Stress filled the entire room. In the middle of it all stood Daniel. Okay everyone, he said, clapping his hands once. The team slowly turned toward him. Let's breathe for a second. One coworker groaned. We don't have time to breathe. Daniel grinned. I promise you, nobody in history has died from a marketing deadline. A few people laughed. The tension in the room eased slightly. Let's solve one problem at a time, Daniel continued. He started assigning tasks, organizing the work, and helping people stay focused. Within an hour, the department looked completely different. The chaos had turned into controlled progress. What Daniel didn't realize was that someone had been watching the entire time. Sophia stood behind the glass wall of her office, observing quietly. She watched the way Daniel spoke to his team. Not with authority, but with calm confidence. People trusted him. And he cared about them. Sophia crossed her arms thoughtfully. Most executives demanded results through pressure and fear. Daniel did it with patience and humor. It fascinated her. Later that evening, after most employees had gone home, Sophia walked into the department. Daniel was packing his bag. He looked surprised when he saw her. "Oh, hi." Sophia looked around the quiet office. "I saw what you did today." Daniel shrugged casually. "Just helping the team survive." "You kept everyone calm," she said. Daniel smiled. "My daughter taught me patience." Sophia tilted her head. "How?" Daniel chuckled. "Try explaining bedtime to a 6-year-old who wants to stay awake forever." Sophia laughed. For a moment, they simply stood there in the quiet office. Then Sophia spoke again. "Would you like to have dinner tonight?" Daniel blinked. "Dinner?" "Yes." He hesitated. "Like, a work dinner?" Sophia shook her head slowly. "No." Daniel scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "That sounds nice, but I should get home to Lily." Sophia thought for a moment. Then she said something unexpected. "Bring her with you." Daniel looked surprised. "You're serious?" "Of course." A small smile appeared on his face. "Well, Lily never says no to food." Sophia laughed. "Good." That evening, the three of them met at a small family restaurant not far from Daniel's apartment. Unlike the elegant place from lunch weeks earlier, this restaurant was simple and warm. Red booths. Soft music. The smell of fresh pizza and pasta filled the air. Lily sat between them, happily swinging her feet under the table. "Daddy says you're his boss," she said to Sophia. Sophia smiled. "That's true." Lily studied her seriously. "You don't look like a boss." Sophia laughed. "What does a boss look like?" Lily thought for a moment. "Mean." Daniel almost choked on his drink. Sophia burst into laughter. "Well, I hope I'm not mean." "You're not," Lily decided. Dinner turned into something completely unexpected. Lily told stories about school. Daniel joked about his terrible cooking. And Sophia found herself laughing more than she had in months. For once, she wasn't thinking about meetings. Or profits. Or competition. She was simply enjoying the moment. When dinner ended, Lily hugged Sophia before leaving. "Bye, boss lady," she said. Sophia smiled warmly. "Good night, Lily." As Daniel and Lily walked away toward their car, Sophia stood outside the restaurant watching them. For some reason, her chest felt lighter. Something about Daniel's life felt real. Honest. Warm. Very different from the quiet luxury she returned to every night. And deep inside, without even realizing it, Sophia Bennett's carefully guarded heart had begun to open. And neither of them knew yet that this unexpected connection was about to grow into something much deeper. Over the next few weeks, something quietly began to change between Daniel Carter and Sophia Bennett. It didn't happen all at once. There were no dramatic confessions or sudden romantic moments. Instead, it grew slowly, through small conversations, shared smiles, and unexpected time together. At Brightstone Marketing, everyone had started noticing it. The once distant and untouchable CEO now visited the marketing department more often. Sometimes it was for work. Sometimes it seemed like something else. But no one dared to ask. One Friday evening, Daniel was finishing a report when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophia. "Are you and Lily free tonight?" Daniel smiled as he typed back. "Depends. Is this a work meeting or a pizza emergency?" A few seconds later, her reply appeared. "Movie night. My place." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Sophia's place?" That definitely sounded different. But Lily was already excited when he told her. Movie night, she cheered. Do they have popcorn? Daniel laughed. I guess we're about to find out. An hour later, Daniel's car pulled up in front of Sophia's penthouse building. The tall glass tower stretched high into the Chicago skyline. Lily stared up with wide eyes. Daddy, this building is huge. Yeah, Daniel admitted. Your boss lady lives pretty high up. Inside, a doorman greeted them and directed them to the elevator. The ride up felt long. When the doors finally opened, Sophia was waiting in the hallway. But something about her looked different tonight. She wasn't wearing her usual sharp business suit. Instead, she wore a simple sweater and comfortable jeans. Her hair was down, and she looked relaxed. Welcome, she said with a warm smile. Lily ran straight toward her. Hi, boss lady. Sophia laughed and hugged her gently. Hi, Lily. Daniel stepped inside the penthouse and looked around. The apartment was beautiful. Large windows showed the glowing city lights far below. Soft lamps created a cozy atmosphere, and a large couch faced an enormous television. But despite the luxury, the space didn't feel cold. It felt peaceful. Popcorn? Sophia asked. Lily nodded enthusiastically. Yes. Soon the three of them were sitting on the couch watching an animated movie. Lily sat between them, laughing at every funny moment. Halfway through the movie, she slowly leaned against Daniel. Then, a few minutes later, her eyes closed. She's out, Daniel whispered. Sophia smiled softly. She lasted longer than I expected. Daniel carefully lifted Lily into his arms. I'll put her somewhere comfortable. Sophia showed him to the guest bedroom. Daniel gently placed Lily on the bed and pulled the blanket over her. For a moment, he stood there watching his daughter sleep. The quiet moment filled him with warmth. When he returned to the living room, Sophia was standing near the large window. The city stretched endlessly below them. Lights glowing. Cars moving like tiny streams of fire. Sophia didn't turn around when she spoke. You're an amazing father. Daniel leaned against the wall beside her. I'm just trying to do my best. She glanced at him. You do more than that. Daniel smiled slightly. I had a good teacher. Your wife? Sophia asked carefully. Daniel shook his head. My mom. He looked down at the floor for a moment. Lily's mom left when she was 2. Sophia felt a quiet ache in her chest. She just left. Daniel nodded. Yeah. He forced a small smile. Life doesn't always work out the way we expect. Sophia turned back toward the window. For the first time since Daniel had known her, she looked vulnerable. I understand that feeling, she said quietly. Daniel looked at her. You do? Sophia nodded slowly. My entire life has been about work. Success. Proving myself. She sighed. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to have a life outside of that. Daniel studied her expression. The powerful CEO everyone feared suddenly looked lonely. You don't seem lonely, he said. Sophia laughed softly. That's because people see the job title, not the person. The silence between them felt different now. More personal. More honest. Daniel chuckled quietly. You know, this whole situation started because of a stupid joke. Sophia turned to him with curiosity. The one about staying the night. Daniel nodded. Yeah. I never expected my boss to actually offer a place to sleep. Sophia smiled gently. Maybe fate likes jokes. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights reflected softly in the window behind them. Daniel felt his heart beating faster. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the way Sophia was looking at him. Carefully. Honestly. Slowly, Daniel reached out and took her hand. Sophia didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers gently tightened around his. It was a simple moment. But it meant more than either of them expected. For years, Sophia Bennett had built walls around her heart. Work. Success. Power. Those things had protected her from disappointment. But standing there beside Daniel, she realized something important. Those walls were starting to crack. And strangely, she didn't want to stop it. After a moment, Daniel spoke softly. I should probably get Lily home. Sophia nodded, though she looked slightly disappointed. Of course. They walked together to the guest room. Lily was still asleep. Daniel carefully lifted her again. As he reached the door, Sophia stopped him. Daniel. He turned. Yes. Sophia hesitated for just a second. Then she smiled. Thank you for tonight. Daniel smiled back. Thank you for inviting us. As the elevator doors closed, Sophia stood quietly in the hallway. For the first time in years, the penthouse felt different. Not empty. Just quiet. And downstairs, as Daniel carried Lily to the car, he couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. A movie night. A quiet conversation. A simple moment holding hands. But deep inside, he knew something had changed. Something real had begun to grow between them. And neither of them could stop it now. Because sometimes the most powerful love stories don't begin with grand gestures. Sometimes, they begin with a joke. And a simple night that turns two lonely lives into something unexpected. And the biggest change of all was still waiting just ahead. Life has a strange way of changing when you least expect it. For Daniel Carter, everything had started with one simple joke on a late night at the office. A joke about needing a place to sleep. Back then, he never imagined that moment would slowly lead to something that would change his entire life. But 6 months later, things looked very different. The marketing department at Brightstone had become one of the strongest teams in the company. And Daniel Carter was no longer just an assistant manager. After months of hard work, leadership, and creative success, Sophia Bennett had officially promoted him to creative director. The announcement had shocked almost everyone in the office. But for Sophia, the decision had been easy. Daniel wasn't just hardworking. He cared about people. And that kind of leadership was rare. But the promotion wasn't the biggest change in Daniel's life. The real change was happening outside the office. One warm Saturday evening, the sun was beginning to set over a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Chicago. A small but beautiful house stood at the end of the street. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't luxurious like Sophia's penthouse. But it felt warm, comfortable, alive. In the driveway, Lily was riding her bicycle in circles. Daddy, look at me, she shouted proudly. Daniel stood nearby, watching carefully. Slow down, he called out. I'm not slow. Lily protested as she pedaled faster. For weeks she had been practicing riding without training wheels. And today, she had finally done it. She was riding on her own. On the front porch, Sophia sat in a wooden chair holding a cup of coffee. Her hair moved gently in the warm evening breeze as she watched Lily with a smile. Daniel walked over and sat beside her. She's getting too brave, he joked. Sophia laughed softly. That's a good thing. Daniel leaned back in his chair and looked around. The neighborhood was quiet. Birds chirped in the trees. The golden light of sunset painted the sky orange and pink. 6 months ago, he would never have imagined living in a place like this. But life had slowly built something new for him. Not just success, but stability, peace, and most importantly, family. Sophia took a sip of her coffee and looked at him. Still hard to believe this all started because of a joke. Daniel laughed. You mean the night I accidentally asked my boss for a place to sleep? Sophia smiled. Exactly. Daniel shook his head. Worst joke of my life. Sophia leaned her head gently on his shoulder. Best decision of mine. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply watched Lily riding her bike across the driveway. Then suddenly Lily shouted again. Daddy. Sophia. Watch this. She rode straight across the driveway without wobbling even once. Daniel stood up and clapped proudly. That's my girl. Lily jumped off the bike and ran toward them. I did it. I did it. Daniel lifted her into the air. You sure did. Sophia stood beside them, her eyes filled with warmth. For someone who had spent most of her life focused on work and success, moments like this felt almost unbelievable. A simple family moment. But it meant everything. Later that evening, after Lily had gone inside to play with her toys, the sky had grown darker. Stars slowly appeared above the quiet neighborhood. Daniel and Sophia were still sitting on the porch. The warm night air felt peaceful. Daniel turned toward her. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." Sophia raised an eyebrow playfully. "That sounds serious." Daniel smiled nervously. "Well, maybe it is." Sophia placed her coffee cup down and looked at him with curiosity. "What is it?" Daniel took a deep breath. "You know, for a long time it was just me and Lily." Sophia nodded softly. "I know. And I always thought that was enough." He paused for a moment. "But then you showed up." Sophia's expression softened. Daniel looked directly into her eyes. "You didn't just change my life. You changed Lily's life too." Inside the house, Lily's laughter echoed faintly through the open window. Sophia looked toward the sound. Her heart felt full. Something she had never truly experienced before. Daniel reached for her hand. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia smiled. "You already asked that." Daniel laughed quietly. "Fair point." He held her hand gently. "Stay." Sophia looked confused for a moment. "Stay?" Daniel nodded. "Not just tonight. Not just tomorrow." He squeezed her hand slightly. "Stay forever." Sophia blinked. For a second, she didn't speak. All her life, people had admired her success. They had respected her power. But no one had ever asked her something so simple. So honest. Daniel wasn't offering her luxury. Or status. He was offering something far more valuable. A home. A family. A life filled with laughter and love. Sophia felt tears slowly fill her eyes. For years she had believed success was the most important thing in the world. But now she realized something else. Success meant nothing without someone to share it with. She smiled through the tears. "Daniel Carter." "Yes. You're terrible at proposals." Daniel laughed nervously. "I know." Sophia leaned forward and wrapped her arms around him. "But my answer is yes." Daniel hugged her tightly. At that exact moment, Lily ran out of the house again. "Why are you hugging?" she asked suspiciously. Daniel looked at Sophia and smiled. "Well." He knelt down beside Lily. "I just asked Sophia if she wants to stay with us forever." Lily's eyes widened. "Like, forever forever?" Sophia knelt beside her and smiled warmly. "If that's okay with you." Lily didn't even hesitate. She threw her arms around Sophia. "Yes." The three of them laughed together on the front porch. Under the soft glow of the porch light. Under the quiet night sky. And in that moment, Sophia Bennett realized something important. For years she had chased success. Money. Power. Recognition. But none of those things had ever made her feel the way she felt right now. Because the greatest success in life isn't building a company or winning a deal. It's building a family. And sometimes, the most beautiful love stories begin with something as simple as a tired joke in a quiet office. A joke that turns into destiny. And a destiny that leads to love.